It's hard talking with my family.
Yeah, there's always a language barrier.
Korean values. Parents impose to follow that.
They always ask you, so, where are you from? And if you tell them, I'm an American, they go, no, 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 really, where are you from?
Asians, they always see as a foreigner and never as like a true American.
You wonder about your identity, and you have to ask constantly. You know, I wake up in the night, you know, in the dream, you know, and ask, you know, who am I?
How many names do you have? My name is Sharon Chang, but I have another name, Mi Jung Chang. That's my Korean name used at home.
어서 와, 이상해. 잘 갔다 왔어? 삼촌 잘 가고?
Now it's been about 14 years that I've been living here in the U.S. with my family. My father actually came first. He moved here first in New York in 1980 to have things settled and a place to live. And the year after that, you know, my mother, my sister, and I then came and moved in, and we became settled as a family here. A few years ago, my parents opened up a deli, so that's what they're still doing now. My parents made it happen. They worked really hard, and even now they're working really hard so that, you know, they can give my sister and me, you know, they want to really give us everything. This idea of like sacrificing for children, it plays a big role in Korean American families, and I don't know. I think it can be very harmful somehow to like the children, and just can ruin the family. I think that needs to be changed because that creates a lot of problems and tensions in certain families. But that's not to say, you know, I don't appreciate like what my parents are doing and, you know, the hard work that they do.
Living an extremely busy life as immigrants, it's really difficult for us to find time to be with our children, even though we really want to spend a lot more time with them.
Even at times when, by chance, my family, you know, my parents are home and I'm home also at night, even then, like, I don't know how to spend time with them because we're doing like different things. They usually watch like Korean television or Korean videos.
Outside of your home, you want to feel like you're an American, because people just have a tendency to want to belong to a certain group. And quote unquote, the American is outside of home. You go to school, that's a huge place to homogenize everyone into, you learn the same things, you eat American foods, you play American sports, you talk English with your American friends and everything. And then when you go home or you go to work to help your parents do, it's totally different.
I'm going to another world, and it's with my family, and it's you know, submerged into everything Korean. I hear Korean being spoken in the house.
이제 반은 한국서 살고
Half year.
every year half는 한국서 살고 half는 미국 살고 이렇게 왔다 갔다 할까 하는 생각을 해.
그래요?
좋지 않아?
몰랐다.
너는 어떻게 생각해? 엄마가 아니.
The big language barrier that exists between us.
내가 영어를 말을 다 할 수가 없고 또
I can't speak perfect English, and she can't speak Korean fluently. That means we can't communicate fully all the time. This can be really frustrating at times.
못 알아듣고 또 거기서 하는 말은 또 내가 못 알아듣고 이렇게 되니까 그게 좀 답답할 때가 많아요.
There's a language barrier, and also just the different values that my parents hold, that differs from mine.
Responsibility, especially the Korean values. Parents impose to follow that. So when parents' friends come by in the house, they call you to the living room and introduce father's friend or something, and we say hi. Then whole hell break loose, and then it's like, no, you gotta bow and you gotta be respectful.
Say hello, bow to them, all that stuff. So I don't want to create any scene or anything. So I just obey. And
when I'm angry, I might say something to her, which would be, normal in an American society. But for me to say that to her, in a Korean society would be very disrespectful. And I try to explain to her sometimes how, I mean no harm and all this other stuff. But, sometimes we do conflict over lots of things.
근데 오늘 좀 늦는 것 같아. 늦었어?
He's strict he is about speaking Korean in the house, with me and my sister. Where my sister and I were having a conversation in English, and my father heard us, and he just told us, all of a sudden, don't speak in English all the time. I want you to speak in Korean. And we were just kind of dumbfounded.
I think it's a parent's duty to teach our children Korean and to make sure they don't forget our cultural heritage.
I don't like it, but I know that my parents want me to go, so I have no choice, so I just go with it. So. Have fun in Korean school on Saturdays every week?
Not that much. Yeah.
Do you like going to Korean school?
No.
Why?
Why? It's just boring.
Why do you hate to come to school?
My mom sent me. My mom dropped me off.
They want to learn Korean on their own without even having been forced. I think just because they are forced, they're less likely or more reluctant to, learn Korean and reject it because they've been forced to, learn it and say it and use it all the time by their parents. But I think that's just the wrong way to go. My parents, most of the time, they eat Korean food. Once in a while, they'll eat I don't know, something like I made at home, if I ever make something, just, but that won't be they don't think that's a real meal. They consider Korean food to be the way you get the real nutrition from.
What's that? Something you blew up last week? But you don't have to eat? Well, I'm not gonna eat Korean food.
I remember, I think one time, my sister and I were eating some kind of American food. I think we were eating maybe pizza, and my father, came into the kitchen and saw us eating that, and he was annoyed by what we were eating and just said why are you eating that? It's junk. You shouldn't have that for dinner. You should have Korean food.
Did you buy anything else besides this? No, because like, yeah, later.
You went to the supermarket, right?
In the morning.
And you bought this and orange juice, that's it?
No, actually I bought 2 orange juice and I didn't have to buy anything else because, you know,
There's nothing to eat though.
I told you those people are coming. Dad already ordered the food.
Yeah, but I don't want only Korean food.
It's not Korean food. There's some Chinese food.
Korean food, Chinese food, you know.
It's not like.
저 미정아 그거 저 케이크 마시게서 먹는지 모르겠지만 몸엔 좋지가 않네.
또 시작한다.
언니가 샀어요. 나 안
그게
샀어.
헬스푸시 못돼. 그 고칼로리, 하이 칼로리, 하이 바이탄 저 단백질은 있지만은 몸엔 좋지가 않아. 그러니까 많이 먹지 말고
많이 안 먹어.
프루시라든가 이 베지터블 같은 그런 거 많이 먹어.
I think it's very annoying just because, I mean, you know, we should, I don't know why I should bother him so much what we eat.
They have a desire when they come to the United States as an immigrant. They say, you know, they want to succeed in this country. Well, if they couldn't succeed because of their age, because of their situation, they want their children to fill that shoes. And sometimes it's very high standards. Like every parent wants their children to go to Harvard or Yale or those Ivy League school. And that's a lot of pressure.
Why it's important to, you know, not forget my identity as a Korean person and my culture and tradition, that kind of thing. They expect, in that respect, they expect a lot of things out of me. And I think that, you know, that seems kind of unfair sometimes because I'm not really expecting a lot out from them. I'm just, you know, expecting them to try to be understanding and not even really accept what I'm doing, but just understand it and, you know, let me do my things, what I have to do.
Virtually every family dealing with this kind of cultural gap, every Asian group and every immigrant group for that matter. But I think Asian American population has certain distinct ways of going through this generation gap and cultural gap.
But then also they're confronted by an incredible emphasis on race and the construction of a racial notion of who people are in the society.
I think the hardest perception to sort of deal with is that Asian Americans are perpetual foreigners.
Well, no matter where you're born, every time they look at you, they're going to see an Asian. Whether you're Korean, you're Chinese, whatever. And they're going to ask you, and that's the thing that bothers me. They always ask you, so, where are you from? And if you tell them, I'm an American, they go, no, 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 really, where are you from? It gets you very frustrated.
Oh, we're from Brooklyn, we're from New York. And they go, no, you know, what's your background, what's your heritage? And I told them I was from Korea. And immediately what they said was, oh, you speak English very well.
It means that they don't consider me a citizen, perhaps, and that I have certain rights in this country. So, you know, I think perceptions of Asian Americans as not quite belonging.
There's going to be some sort of discrimination or prejudice or some sort of difference because I look different. You know, there's no way I can change that, and I wouldn't want to change that.
Asians are seen as not having the right way of speaking, not being able to inspire people, not being able to be good leaders in the context of American culture.
Most of social perceptions about Asian Americans people have in this country are gotten through movies, TV, mainstream, things like this.
They're oftentimes automatically represented as somehow an evil gangster. That's where you see the strong Asian males as heavy gangsters in all the movies that you see and all the TV shows that you see. Whereas the Asian females are oftentimes the reporters who succumb to the white policeman who's so handsome, and ultimately they end up in bed the next night.
Since you are Asian, you're good in mathematics, you're good in science.
That's what you believe about me, what you think you know about me, just because I have an Asian face. It's not right.
You're in the middle, and like for my Asian friends, they call me Twinkie because they say that, you know, when you're a Twinkie, you're yellow on the outside, white on the inside. And they say because I hang out with so many Caucasians that I'm a Twinkie. And they discriminate against me. And then I turn to my, you know, my Caucasian friends, and, you know, they're like, you know, oh, she's Korean, you know, and you're so Korean in your ways. And I'm in the middle, and I'm like, you know, where, the big thing is, where do you fit in, right?
Being in two different worlds, you are groundless.
Am I really more Korean, or am I more American? And just how Korean am I? How American am I?
Being between two worlds, I mean, some people say it might give you power, but on the other side, you know, you have no firm ground, you know, where a so-called homeland or any places that they will accept you as who you are. I mean, no, not even who you are. They don't question you. You are Korean. You are American. You know, well, we don't have that place. You know, we are always drifting here. If it's comfortable here, I stay, but not permanently. So I move to the other side. You know, and you know, you wonder about your identity, and you have to ask constantly. You know, I wake up in the night, you know, in the dream, you know, and ask, you know, who am I? I mean, and the problem is, do you think? I don't think I'll find that answer.
Being caught between, on the one hand, traditional cultures, and then on the other hand, between racism, I think creates all sorts of difficulties that young people have to negotiate through. Out of that, I think some people really feel that they have to become so-called whiter than white. They really try to bend over backwards to try to downplay the differences that they are perceived as having, and to try to adjust and to become like them.
I know of people who wanted to sort of forget about that part of their heritage and just say, I'm American, I wish I had blonde hair, blue eyes, try to look that way.
But in this racialized world, you can't pass unless they come up with some injection, serum, that can make all of our skin's colors the same. Then this problem is always going to be there in American society as long as racism exists. And on the other side, there are people who are really trying to figure out how can you make sense of these differences.
I first came to know of Center for Korean American Culture in the summer of '94. I was sort of taken by how they call themselves a Korean American organization as opposed to just Korean, and I wanted to know more about it. I want to discuss with other Korean Americans, the problems that we are facing, know what they think, and see the different perspectives. They had a lot of different things going on, and one of them was the Pungmul group. They play traditional Korean music, and I wasn't really interested in that, and I didn't know too much about that, but I just said, yeah, maybe I will join and see what that's about. I was trying to come in as a volunteer, and then I became a member, and I started playing Pungmul with them. What I'm getting out of all these places is helping me better redefine and create my identity as an Asian American. And it's just from all these different aspects of the Asian American community that's helping me do this. My parents, they're really happy and proud that I'm playing Pungmul, and because it's something of Korean culture, and they're glad that I'm getting to know more about Korean culture.
Recognizing your heritage gives you strength. I think that knowing your heritage and being proud of it gives you something to draw from.
I think some people then try to take Asian languages and they go back to their homelands and try to stay in touch with their families and relatives and try to make some sense of the fact that they're of two cultures at the same time. And that's an interesting challenge, I think.
Today, I've made an effort to relearn Cantonese. I've gone back to Hong Kong and lived there and worked there for a year, and that has helped a lot. And I think my parents are happy. I think there's, in some ways, they feel closer to me because I can speak to them comfortably.
It becomes an interesting challenge for those 1.5ers and those bicultural youth in thinking about how can they create a niche for themselves in this more complex world, which is really different than earlier immigrants. Or they're also getting involved in activism, trying to combat issues of racism, sexism, homophobia, class issues that are manifested in, for example, the model minority stereotype. Race and class is combined in that.
Through the park. And in dedication to
I know someone who has a very different approach to these issues. Hyun-Lee thinks if problems are out there, we should face the problems and fight against them to get the rights we are entitled to have as American people. Hyun works very actively at the Committee Against Anti-Asian Violence.
Experience of racism, I guess different Asian Americans or immigrants experienced at different degrees, but the experience of racism never lets you forget your identity, actually, and that never lets you forget that you are a Korean, you are Asian, and that for a long time, sort of having to, deal with that problem just on your own individually. Right? How do I combat this? Next time somebody says something racist to me, what should I say? All these things, just thinking about it and on your own, and then actually when you come to a place like this, people with common experiences, and now you're combating it with other people as part of a movement, I think it makes things a lot easier, actually, because you're not isolated thinking about these issues in a vacuum, and also understanding it in the context of a historical kind of movement, it's very, very empowering.
We will read the names of the people who have died at the hands of anti-Asian violence.
Myself working in Committee Against Anti-Asian Violence, that really shapes my experience and my identity. I would, before anything else, I would identify myself as an activist, community organizer.
You don't become who you are just thinking. You have to act, you have to participate. And I guess that's what I'm trying to do and hoping that many other people, Korean Americans, would do.
I just try to understand, I think, like what things from Korean society has affected me, has affected my thinking, and like what things have growing up, you know, most of my life in the U.S., what things have affected me in what way, and I try to understand from where, like the way I think comes from.
These are larger, very difficult issues that may take us a lifetime to work through. And it's really in that journey of a lifetime that we can meet lots of really interesting people and find out how they've tried to come up with their own solutions to these very same problems, or they've got variations of these same problems. And in fact, instead of thinking of all this as a whole big negative kind of experience, we need to understand it as one of the parts of life that makes it most interesting and exciting.
I'm trying to figure out, like, you know, what I can do to, you know, to make things better, my relationship with my family, you know, especially my parents. And that seems like more of a obstacle than, you know, with society, just because, you know, they're my family.
Everything's changing, and we can't hold on to what we grew up with as parents and insist that our children recreate that kind of life with us and towards us. American culture cannot insist on forcing Asians to conform to a certain mold. Because what is American society after all? Is it a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant society? Should it insist on everybody, whether they're Anglo-Saxon and white or not, conform to that? That can't happen.
First-generation Asians should understand that when their child goes out to school, it's a very different world, and that they're every day negotiating their responsibilities to their parents, but at the same time trying to get ahead in American society.
What is needed here is that there has to be lots of talk, lots of people trying to figure these problems out. I think there have to be, in the worst conflict situations, there have to be families being willing and open to say, yeah, we've got to talk about this to other people. I think the greatest challenge that we're faced with is to find our own way, not to accept one or the other option, but to create something that makes sense for the experience that we've come out of, to create a culture and to create communities which really are able to negotiate these very different cultures and to try to make sense of something from these very different cultures.
I will always have to question myself about my Asian American identity because I'll be living in this country for my whole life.